thank you for coming on time. I want to do a little bit of a movement ritual. I don't know how that will be. I will have to imagine all of you. So if you would take a moment, and we'll start with the floor and feel your feet on the floor and feel the relationship of your feet on the floor. So I want to do a little bit of a sensing experience in your material world as we then join the material world with a virtual world and also the world of our imagination, because that is one way, for me anyway, to connect with my clients and what's inside, and certainly today when you're all frozen. Energy moves up from your sense of your relationship with your feet on the floor, moving right up through your body, out the top of your head, and then just feel the space above you that's filled with possibilities, curiosities, your own intuition and brilliance, and allow that energy to come down through your body. And these two streams meet in your heart. So any way you like, if you could take your hands and let them move into your forward space and just notice whether you'd like your palms up or your palms down or your palms facing. And then bring that energy to your heart and just, we'll stay there for just a moment to give yourself whatever you might need at this moment. These are really trying times, and as empathic people, as people who work somatically through our bodies, there has to be some experience and resonance in our bodies with the kind of chaos and disturbances that are in our outer environment, particularly in the States. And then, if you would allow that energy to move from your heart in any way that feels right, to move into an advancing and spreading. And for me, since you're frozen, but I can picture all of you sitting in a very large circle, and I am spreading my arms out in the hopes of contacting the entire circle of people I know, people I don't know, people I would like to get to know. So just stay there for a moment so that you, in your mind's eye, you connect with this virtual space. And then when it's right, let your arms rest. Curtis, can you hear me?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, I would like to leave for a moment while people, I'm going to invite people to unmute and say their names in popcorn style and where they're from. So I'm going to leave and re-enter the meeting. Is that okay? And then maybe it'll stop being frozen.
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Oh, I am totally frozen. So I'm going to, yeah, so I'm going to have to, gosh, use my phone. So I'm going to have to disappear for, I hope, not longer than 3 minutes. I have to literally turn my computer off and turn it back on again. And so if people could say their names and where they're from, and I will be right back to give you the scheme of the day. Thank you. Oh, Lord.
Karen Bradley, Muscadabbit Harbor, Nova Scotia.
Jennifer Mazenko. I'm in Oxford, Mississippi with my kitty cat. There she is.
Jack Hand in Apex, North Carolina.
Donna Newman. Leslie Powell. Oops. Leslie Powell. I'm in Fleischmann's in New York, Catskills.
Karen Stud, right outside Washington, D.C.
Betty Lamont in Seattle.
May Chenlu in New York.
Simona Aronow, Central Virginia, near Charlottesville.
I'm Tony Zhou from Delft, the Netherlands in Europe.
I'm Barbara Nordstrom Lowe, Minneapolis, Minnesota, United States.
I'm Donna Blank.
I'm Penny Chong. I'm Crozet, Virginia, outside Charlottesville, Virginia, United States.
I'm Donna Blank, right
Did
up.
you hear that?
Yes.
No, I don't particularly like those. Yeah, no, I don't like those.
Natasha Aladef Jones,
those are
Geneva,
better.
Switzerland.
Well,
Nathan Andari, Athens, Ohio.
Sarah Jane Burton. Oops, sorry. Hillary Brian, I'm in Madison, Wisconsin. Sarah Jane Burton, Guelph, Ontario, Canada, near Toronto.
Ainsley
Harriet Grimm.
New York.
Audrey Albert King from Arlington, Massachusetts.
Donna Blank from right outside of Washington, D.C.
Hi, Judy Steele from Central Virginia near Richmond.
Hi, I'm Kate Job from Winterthur, Switzerland. Hi, Natasha.
Okay, I'm back.
Your contact.
Helen Walkley from Vancouver, British Columbia.
Hi, Helen.
Hi, Kate.
Sharon Davis Brown from Southern California.
Agnieszka Sokołowska from Poland, Warsaw.
Martha Eddy here in New York City.
Ted Earhart and Nina Robinson in Brooklyn.
How are we doing? Thank you.
Rochelle Safour in Chicago area.
So, Shihan Yu from Leonia, New Jersey.
Al Shafir from Haifa, Israel.
Has everyone said who they are?
Tara Mungie. I haven't. Tara Mungie in Plano, Texas.
Nancy Beardall, Boston, Mass.
Oh, great. All right. I hope we didn't miss anyone. Well, I'm back too. Thank you. That was, what can you do? All right. Try to be calm, put my practice into practice. So welcome again for coming for this day. I want to thank Karen for her initial email that started this, and she's going to give an introduction in a minute. So this is kind of my thought about the overview of the day. Now would be a good time to mute if you haven't. There'll be times to mute and unmute. Just to let you know, we're recording everything in this main room. There'll be a time for breakout rooms. We're not recording that. And if in the process of even in the main room, there's something that you want to say that you don't want recorded, say something, and Curtis will do his best to not record that and then start the recording again. LIMS has very kindly offered their platform and capacity for breakout rooms, and for moments like that one when I'm so happy to have this, have facilitated this, and then I have to disappear. So the procedure will be, Karen is going to offer an introduction, and then we'll have about 10 minutes when people can respond in this environment to what she said. And we'll do that by, I think, either calling out or raising your hand, and then I'll say so and so, and then you can unmute and speak, and then it's good at the end to say that you're done so that a next person can speak. And then after that, I thought it would be useful to go into breakout rooms. We might only need 3. I don't know, Curtis is arranging that, or maybe there'll be 4. And I'm thinking 15, 20 minutes there, so that people have an opportunity to share their experiences and stories in a small group. And then we'll come back to the main group and have a little report out on some of the main topics, and then choose where to begin for today. And then I will leave some time at the end. I'm thinking 15, 20 minutes, and I know that some people might not even be able to stay the whole time. And we'll use that time to see what people want to do in the future. I am happy to help facilitate. I don't have an agenda. I just think this is a lively topic. I think it's very important. Obviously, some form of online teaching is with us for a very long time. And there's probably integrative paths that we'll be taking. So are there any questions with that kind of overview?
Tara, I wanted to let you know that there's an option here for someone to raise their hand. So if you go into the participant section and go right to the very bottom of the list, in the lower right-hand corner, there's a little thing you can click that says raise hand.
Oh, okay.
See that?
Great.
So people can raise their hands that way to talk.
Great. Excellent. Okay. And I'm not going to give an introduction. I'm just going to invite Karen to very kindly speak and or move. I see we have two. Okay. Where is Karen?
No, I'm right next to you. I'm here.
Oh, here you are. Okay, thank you.
I'm here.
All right.
On my screen, I'm right next to you. Hello, everybody. It's amazing to see, again, all these faces and names, or put faces to names. This is great. First thing I just want to do very briefly is just to acknowledge the fact that when this first came up, we're now in a very different place, obviously. There's a lot that's going on right now, at least in the United States, that is, so there's a lot of civil unrest that is happening that is really coming to the surface. And so I think we need to acknowledge that part of our feeling of discontent, our feeling of unease, our feeling of trepidation is there. I don't intend to do anything about that in this conversation, but I just know that for myself, that's very present in what I am experiencing right now. And I imagine that that's the case for others as well. So I just wanted to make sure that that's acknowledged. The other thing I guess I just want to start with is that I find myself kind of in an unlikely position at the moment. I am normally feel that I, register myself in the spectrum of change and constant, being very much a proponent of change, of, tradition versus innovation. I often really feel drawn toward innovation more than the tradition in those dualities of change constant and innovation tradition. That's been part of my mission in terms of the Laban Bertinieff movement system, is to really promote innovation and, activity. So for me to be putting the brakes on and saying in this moment of innovation of let's shift a lot of things online is a kind of strange, I feel I'm in a strange place to a certain extent, but I feel it's very necessary to acknowledge it. And just some other thoughts that have been whirling through my head, because Tara, kindly wanted to include me since I was kind of a catalyst in getting this discussion going. Obviously, this is something that has nothing to do with uniquely me, but I kind of pushed something into the listserv based on my personal experience that brought something that was deep within me, bubbling and coming out in various ways, came much more to the surface because of a very personal experience that I had. But that is only one small piece of what I've been thinking about. Again, that was more just a kind of catalytic kind of instance for me to want to engage with the community about this phenomena of more online presence, more online teaching, and what that means. So again, I feel a little bit like also to a certain extent, because I know that there's a lot of people whose experience is very much positive around this and feeling that it is really a great way of finding a way out of isolation, of finding connections. That's definitely true. And I do not want to dismiss that or not recognize that. But I just want to acknowledge that I feel that that's a very kind of, that's an ersatz, you know, framing of interaction. That's not true. It's not true interaction. And I can appreciate that if I'm a starving person and somebody offers me a piece of Wonder Bread, I will be glad to eat it. But it is not the same bread as if I am going to a bakery and getting fresh baked bread. And so I really feel that we acknowledge the limitations, the real deep limitations, the profound limitations of the online methodology for interacting and for teaching. And I probably am not going to say anything that is very new to anyone here. So rather, it's just my goal with these thoughts to bring things more into our conscious awareness. So, I mean, from my perspective, there's no dynamosphere that's real. I mean, each of us is in our own dynamosphere. I am in my room, my time zone, noises in my house. I can't make eye contact. I can't actually hear people or pick up on the subtle cues that I pick up on in real. So it's not just, you know, touch. There's you know, this idea that, oh yes, we're not physically present, so there's touch missing. But even the things that we do have at our capacity, our perception of hearing and our perception of seeing through this online technology, even those things are not really truly present. They are still also virtually present. Seeing and hearing virtually is not at all the same thing as seeing and hearing in an embodied presence with someone. So I think keeping that, you know, as part of what we know. That said, I mean, the so it becomes very superficial, I guess is what happens often. And yet superficial is not in and of itself a bad thing. You know, our skin, largest organ of the body, is our superficial aspect of our covering. So, you know, superficial and deep have a profound relationship. So that's great. But recognizing what is superficial versus what is deep, recognizing what is core, what is periphery. So using our own system and the language of our system and the embodied metaphors that that language gives us access to in understanding part-whole relationships, I think is vital to bringing that into the conversation and experience of online discourse, online interaction. So I, you know, want us to promote that, you know, so in terms of mitigating or ameliorating some of what could be seen as limitations or negative effects. I think we have our own system to draw upon to really help us further understand the profound consequences of adopting this use of technology in embodied education. And I also think that it's a long-term proposition. I mean, there are things that, you know, you can jump on the bandwagon of wanting to be very much in distress over the fact that they're finding micro nano particles of plastic in, you know, the Arctic. But at the same time, plastic has been an innovative thing that has allowed advances in lots of technology, including medical technology, that we're all, you know, reliant upon. So you don't, you know, there is both the good and the bad that always has to be recognized. And so I definitely want to feel that we have a capacity to see that, but also think long-term, because it has taken decades and decades for people to really understand the significance of, you know, what it has meant to have so much readily available plastic. That is not something that was really understood for a long time, or at least it wasn't understood widely. And I think that's always true with technology, everything from nuclear fission to, I think I put this out on Facebook at one point, yes, as soon as we created the ship, we also created the phenomena of the shipwreck. So, remembering that, I think, is an important thing to keep in mind. Yet again, not that as I see myself more of a change or innovator, it's also strange for me to be going back to the classics. So recently I went back and was looking at and reading about Plato's allegory of the cave. And I think that is also something we should all revisit. So for those of you who haven't gone back to your old Greek stuff for a while, I strongly, suggest you look at all the charming, very charming YouTube videos of Plato's allegory of the cave. There are many, because it has such profound lessons on multiple levels that have to do with this particular time and place we find ourselves in, and the timeless nature of, what is reality? What is reality? And how we shape it, and then how we respond to others' visions of reality or others' realities. So I am glad to share, some aspects of that with you as well. But that's really all I wanted to say. I mean, I think that there's, a lot here for us to discuss, and I'm delighted that many of us are joining in common, and this conversation is not at an end, it's at a beginning. I know that I've been speaking to Tony of Inspirays, because he's been so instrumental in a lot of online stuff through the webinars and the online journal, that this is those are other vehicles where we can continue this discussion as well. So wanted you to alert you to the fact that there will be more about this in coming months. And with that, I'm happy to turn it over to going into breakout rooms or whatever is the next part that Tara envisions.
Okay, I thought maybe we'll just open up a discussion here for 5 or 10 minutes if people want to have some initial responses. I know there are many people here, and maybe everyone here has different levels of, has been teaching for a while online and has different kinds of experiences. And this might be a good moment to just have some responses that deal with the kind of the big picture or anything that you presented. So I'd like to just leave it open for a little bit for comments and discussion and sharings. And by the way, there are 2 pictures of you, so I have to go back and forth. So if you want to speak and I haven't said anything, please just unmute yourself, especially when it's quiet, and just start speaking and say your name, and then we'll listen.
Tara, can you see the hands that are raised in the participant, or should I be telling you that they're raised?
Oh yes, maybe you could tell me or help out with this. I'm fine. Yeah.
So we have Leslie and Jennifer that both have raised their hands.
Okay, why don't you do that 1, 2, Leslie first, Jennifer second. Thank you.
Leslie Powell. I've been teaching online, and I've also been studying with many teachers online. And it's been a really wonderful experience. In many ways, I'm teaching people from all over the country and sometimes other countries. And I think that what you have to think about is how you have to change your teaching for the medium. So for instance, I took a workshop with one of my Pilates teachers, and yes, he led the workshop that you saw he work on somebody, but he used simple props to have hands-on experience or tactile feelings. And then he also opened it up, any questions, things like that. And then there's also a dialogue after the workshop. So I've had a very positive, and in many ways, I feel like we can reach a whole different client or student, because not everybody can travel, especially now, but even when I'm in New York City, New York is an expensive place to come travel to. So it's been a great experience.
I just wanted to say Leslie is a fantastic online teacher. She gives all kinds of comments. I've loved her classes. I felt like I was seen. I learned. So she has a lot of good resources. Yeah. Jennifer.
Yeah, I just wanted to share, I sat in on a national dance education organization a couple of weeks ago, and I also received guidelines from Dance USA about if you have to teach live in the next coming months or year or whatever, guidelines to help with that. And in the current state that we're in, the guidelines are so restrictive. I feel like I can do with them more in their living room. Do not encourage engaged breath with movement. That's one of the guidelines. One of the guidelines is don't get on the floor. You have to stay standing. One of the guidelines is they have to wear shoes. I mean, the guidelines are so restrictive that I actually feel like currently I can get more done with them online than I could in person because it's so dangerous.
Thanks. Tara Munji? Can't hear you. Oh, you're still muted.
Sorry. Okay, better?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I wanted to respond to Karen's, something in Karen's prologue, which was, I thought, wonderful. In terms of what's real, I, for one, love embodied engagement. I love tactile, feedback. I'm a kinesthetic person. And so I totally cop to my preferred modality is engaging with people in person, in the room, and that kind of exchange of energy. But I worry if we don't accept this sort of new normal in terms of the proliferation of virtual learning, we've already missed the crest of the wave. That is to say, I think the bifurcation of Plato's, allegory of the cave, where someone's in the cave and then reality is happening out there, for so many learners, virtual learning is reality. And for those of us perhaps who have been later adopters, yes, there are a lot of limitations that we've all touched upon, but it's actually what is real for so many people who are younger than me and perhaps younger than you, Karen. So I just wanted to respond to that, to say we have to be honest about the medium, but I think we have to accept that in some ways this is going to be people's preferences.
Yeah, and I think that's problematic, and I do not believe that we should accept that as reality. I think we should use it, but I think we should also, these people don't just exist online, and they shouldn't just exist online. They go, they take showers, they interact with friends, family, lovers. So, and I think it's our duty to bring more awareness to the fact that when they are online, that is a great opportunity, a great privilege, a great possibility. But it's different, and it needs to not be somehow it's okay that that's real. It's not real. It's okay that it is what it is, but it's not okay. But don't pretend that it's real. It's not real. It just is not.
See, another conversation for another day, but I think for some people, they think that is part of what's being real. But here we might be parsing this too much, but what I'm saying is that bifurcation of what is three-dimensionally in this room with me versus what's online that split doesn't exist for some people. It's different, I guess, different totally, but I think we have to be careful if we say it isn't real.
Okay, well, I have to say though that I just need to say that I don't bifurcate between real, unreal. I do think of this as a whole. But the point is, you have to understand the part in order to understand the whole. So I don't perceive of myself as bifurcating between good, bad, online, not online education. I'm doing a ton of online education internationally. So I don't perceive that it is an either or.
Let's hold this for a minute. This is a lively one. This is one of the big topics. Kate was next, and then we have a few more, and then maybe we'll do breakout rooms, or maybe we'll just keep talking here because people are comfortable. Go ahead, Kate.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here and to see some people who I don't know and put names to, and to see friends. It's just great. And I want to thank you, Karen, for your, I don't know, it seems rather a strongly polarized position because to contribute to this discussion, and I think it brings it really to a head. So I really appreciate that, because I do know you do a lot of training online and you have other experiences with it too. I am tripping over the same thing about what's real. And I feel like when the thing that's important to me is the experience that a person has when I'm working with them or when I'm training them. So I don't know what exactly the criteria for real is, because if I have an experience, I mean, I started working kind of online, I don't know, 25 years ago on the phone, doing therapy sessions on the phone, and working with movement, working with the experiences that I had of somebody. For instance, you just move backwards and they say, yeah, I did, how did you know? You know, like that. So it's like really subtle experiences that we can perceive. And was that experience real that she had, or what I had? It was very real to me. It's the realest thing that's happening, and it's not that different from being in the room with the person. I guess that I would like to understand what your, I don't know if I agree with your criteria for real as far as I understand it. Let me say it that way. But if I'm misunderstanding your criteria for real, I would like to know that.
Yeah, I don't think that I'm using that term real, not real. I would say that's a misnomer. That just, I think, has become a short in a way. But, and I don't, again, disagree. What I'm seeing is that I feel like there's just a lack of recognition of the deep and significant and profound future patterns that we're getting for. I mean, technology is a further extension system from the human body, as we all know. And as we extend further and further and further and further and further away and become more and more and more and more and more differentiated, that gives us great things. That has expanded science, technology, everything. But it also has caused the utter problems that we are faced with in this world. And so I think that the wholeness is what I'm after, not this bifurcation. So I keep feeling somewhat distressed by being perceived as being so unreal, real, online, offline. That's not at all what I'm saying. That's not at all what I think. But I do see a lack of conscious awareness of the fact that interaction, it's the difference between seeing two simultaneous solos, an ensemble and a duet. That those both can be beautiful, but the person's experience that you named was a profound experience. I'm not saying that there isn't significant individual good, if not wonderful experiences, but there is not real interaction in the way that I perceive the subtlety of interaction based in rhythm, phrasing, dynamic. So again, it goes back to the Wonder Bread thing. If you don't have the capacity for the other parts, if you forget about them, if you diminish them, if you set them aside because of something else, what I'm saying is there's a danger in that. What I'm being is a canary in the minefield. What?
What are the other parts? What do you mean by the other parts?
That there's missing, the interactive capacity is extremely diminished. So to go again to back to my example, the personal example I gave at that was the missive I wrote that was the online thing. No one knew that I was having that experience except me. Now I had the opportunity, I could have shared that with the teacher who was leading the class, but I didn't have to. If I had been in a class filled with other people, they still wouldn't have had my experience, but there would have been recognition that I was having an experience at some level. So we have all these sayings like, you really can't appreciate something until you've, walked in the shoes of someone else's shoes, but you can't really be their feet in their shoes. That is the human reality. And what we want to constantly get closer and closer to, we're constantly parsing this, what we observe, what we experience. And this material, we're often trying to bring those closer and closer together. And the online does not allow them to come as close together as they can in the embodied classroom. Yes, it does. It doesn't mean that it's not valuable. It doesn't mean you can't also have both observation and experience and somehow connect them. But it's just, again, it's ersatz. It's not the same. And I'm only saying that we need to remember that. We need to be consciously aware of that, rather than just say how wonderful it is. Yes, it's wonderful that I'm connecting simultaneously to Mexico, China, Israel, the Netherlands in one of my classes.
I mean, can I come in, or how do we go here?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good question. That's a good question that I'm thinking about. Because I want to get to some other people. I'd like, if you have an immediate response, why don't you respond to that, and then we'll move on. But I think I have something about the topic, which is what we'll get back to in a little bit. Did you want to respond?
I don't want to extend this for too long because I know that there's a lot of rich stuff that's happening, but I don't know. I ersatz and not real, and these words are too extreme for me, because they just don't reflect my experience, which has been very positive in online things. And I've had people in the room with me have experiences that I didn't know they were having. And so it's not, I don't think that's a unique thing to the online form. So I'm not convinced. I don't think we should move everything online either. I'm not into that. I would love contact with people. I don't agree with you about relationship. I've seen and done amazing things with relationship, also in contact. And I just don't agree with you. I don't have the same experience.
So I just like to hold that we have a lot of different experiences in terms of individual and in groups. So I'd like to move on a little bit. There's probably going to be a lot of open ends. I can't imagine total closures on different topics, because the experience is so varied. There's not right or wrong. It's just really different. Simona, would you like to speak? You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah, sure. There's so much to say on everything, and the conversation has evolved. But I guess just as it tied me over, I would say in terms of the last conversation, which is not what I originally was going to speak to, but I think that the interactive capacity has also been something I've noticed in the groups I've led. And I think also ties into, again, that whole notion of, you know, how are we teaching? What kind of class are we teaching? And I think in terms of our work, the richness of the three-dimensionality versus a one-dimensional, two-dimensional movement or experience, that there's a whole range of addressing that. And some classes lend themselves a little more to one-dimensional platform, and, you know, a different kind of interaction. Also in terms of how much relationship is necessary. So there's a lot of different pieces to that, and that I think about a lot on my own. I originally wanted to just, because it seems like there's so much, I just wanted to also introduce a few other questions to throw around and think about in terms of these dynamics. And one is to just name a few things. One is the difference between a person new to the experience or an experienced person taking the class, and how that varies, and how online, you know, in an individual classroom, there often seems to be a different kind of group cohesion and support to allow that melding and mixing a little more easily than online, in my experience. But just the idea of, you know, with a new person who doesn't have a clear sense of embodiment versus someone that really can go into the subtleties of the work, and how one can begin to talk about that and teach, like, it's almost as if the flatness of some of this experience for some individuals, there may need to be some teaching about what is embodiment and how do you find that connection in yourself versus someone who can just dive in and have a very deep experience. And then also, you know, we talked earlier about if there's something you want to say that's to take it off the recording. There's another element I've noticed that's not been spoken to over and again in all of the videos. When are you online? When are you close your camera? When you close your camera, do you feel more of a liberty to go into your personal work because you're not being seen? For some people, it's helpful to be on camera, to be seen, or to see others. So I think there's a whole other kind of question about the dynamics and also the ethics of the seeing and not seeing. That comes up, I think, in a lot of different teaching experiences, and, you know, the students and what they're like, what makes the students feel safe enough to participate. So I think speaking to the issue at the beginning, whatever kind of class you have, about safety, confidentiality, those things that we might do in person that sometimes kind of aren't especially addressed as we begin to shift to online. Sometimes I think, depending on the type of class you're teaching, are really, really relevant. And then the last little thought to throw in has to do, again, with, in terms of embodiment, I think that sense of relationship I have experienced with, again, participating in different classes and teaching myself, that the more embodied you are as a teacher, so that I see those teachers that are able to actually demonstrate and live in that three-dimensional reality that visually people can and kinesthetically can get. I think it's a lot more successful. I mean, it's almost like an understatement, but there seems to be a different quality of having to not assume that embodiment, but actually focus on it more, and potentially even have individuals. I think it's about an awareness and a consciousness. So as an individual is even taking a class, you know, to be able to have them experience what it's like, difference between technology and in person, is a whole other topic. So just a lot of random ideas that have been running around in my head. So just to put that into our pool of discussion.
Okay, I'd like to just let the few other people who spoke, and maybe you could be really essential, and then I think it might be good to divide up. How about Ainsley? Was there something you wanted to add? or
Yeah.
broaden the discussion. Hi.
Hi, I'm so glad to see you guys, and I'm so grateful for this conversation. My college teaching got switched online in the middle of the term, and I was feeling so far away from the students, and especially as far as a kind of emotional sense and like being able to sense their whole bodies in the ways that I'm used to. So I felt really almost kind of blind as a teacher. So I'm so excited to talk about those aspects. One of the things I wanted to throw out that I'm thinking about is at my school, it went immediately, we can't be in person, so that means we're online and we're on Zoom. And what I'm thinking about for the fall, if we're probably in the same situation, what are the ways to do distance learning that are not online and that are not on Zoom? Are there some other ways to think about some of these questions and to explore, to facilitate explorations, you know, ways to think about that, to brainstorm together? So that was just a thought. Thank you.
Oh,
all.
great. Thank you. Nathan? Nathan, I don't know. Is Nathan here?
Hi there. Likewise, great to see everyone, and also some new faces that I've met through email, but not visually. Similar to what Ainsley was bringing up, same thing. Everything got switched, and it was a matter of what to do and how to do. On one hand, it was really remarkable. So many more resources were made available to me and many others, because I think as a community, we did connect in a really rich and meaningful way, and that made me super proud and super excited. And so it also was invigorating to add those extra resources as I go forward. I did have a really tough emotional time clicking the X at the end of a meeting, because the trace forms and the energy that the human body leaves behind in the space that I both leave, but that I also take with me. And that connection then kind of stretches through time and space, was really hard for me to overcome, and still today. And I'm grappling with it. So I think in sharing that, I'm also reflecting maybe a health and wellness kind of support that needs to occur, both on the front end, but also on the back end, because a black screen is so tough to witness, and I don't get to take or share, and that it doesn't become this kind of, well, you see, that's
Right.
what I needed to say. So I wanted to insert that as well.
Thank you. I've had that experience when I've said goodbye to clients. I want to hang on a little bit. Thank you. Barbara. We'll do Barbara, Donna, then I think we'll have like 10 minutes of breakout, and then we'll come back. Barbara?
Okay, and I'll just, yes, seeing everybody, friends, old faces that people I've known and haven't seen, all of that. I just want to say the direction that this conversation is going in is what I'm really searching for, which is what I want to really hear and learn from people, as well as from my own experience. And this is speaking also as a dance movement therapist, as well as someone who teaches dance, has taught dance classes, so kind of in various camps, is I want to get more understanding of what works and how with online and what doesn't, and what we can do about it. So it's a very nuts and bolts thing, but to really learn from all of us, like what are we finding are the things that are useful and helpful? How are we doing that? And then what are the things that it's like, yeah, nobody's finding a way to make this work, and we just need to be clear about that and say, this piece of how we teach this work and material, we can't do this online, we'll just do our best, but it's not going to be the same as real. So that's my personal interest, and I hope we get more of that.
All right, thank you. Donna?
Yes, thank you. And just to reiterate, it's wonderful to see people whom I know and people whose names I know and put faces. I chose initially not to do my dance groups with people with dementia as a dance movement therapist, because the in-person body-to-body interaction is such a vital part of it, and the subtle energy shifts, or sometimes not so subtle energy shifts. are dramatically missing. However, this is going on and it's going to continue going on. And I feel as though I'm depriving people of not bringing the embodied piece with me. So I am going to start doing groups. I'm interested by Karen Studd's, when you talked about not really seeing and not really hearing. I'm interested in that. And as I'm a scanner. I'm a scanner by nature, and I actually think that it's one of my skills that I move from a focus of the whole group to the individual. That's one of the things that I bring specifically that is, I think, is vital for people with dementia. So it's clear to me that it needs to be a much smaller group because I'm scanning right here as we're talking. I'm scanning. I'm looking for where's the movement, who's nodding, who's, you know, involved in something else. To the extent that I can see, because I can't see everyone. But I want to speak directly to, yes, like Barbara said, I'm interested in nuts and bolts, what works and what doesn't work in terms of people feeling as though they're seen and heard. And I just want to bring my latest interaction with my granddaughter on Zoom. Yeah. This is not a client, I'm not teaching, but it was the first experience that I had. She's 5. And it was the first time that she came forward to the camera and very shy and whispered to her mother before she would speak to my husband or me, which wouldn't happen in live. But I felt her. I didn't get to kiss her. I didn't get to feel her skin. I didn't feel the substance of her, but I felt emotionally moved. And so how can I get the most out of this medium so that I feel people and they feel me and one another?
Right. Well, that's really, really important. And I feel you, by the way. I really felt your discussion, and I have found working mostly one-on-one, because that's what I'm doing. I have been shocked at how much I can see and how much I can feel. And I'm really working on as much witnessing language as I can so that I can let the client know that. How do people feel about taking like 15 minutes in breakout rooms, in smaller groups so that you can share more? Is that all right?
Conversation before the break.
Pardon?
I would like to add to the conversation before the break.
Okay, speak right up.
I would like to add something as well.
Okay, wait, who's the second person? Who was that?
And my hand has been up for quite a while, Rochelle.
Okay, okay. I don't always know that. Curtis has been helping, but okay, go ahead. I don't want to cut anybody off.
Who are you calling on?
I'm calling on you, Miss Betty.
Okay, because I work with children, my experience is quite different. And I found myself to be very successful discussing issues with their parents, and we've moved forward in many ways in our understanding of what's happening for the children. The children I work with are abused, neglected, adopted from orphanages around the world, most of them with high anxiety, PTSD, severe brain injuries, severe emotional deprivation. Those are my kids. And so I think their experience can inform some of our experience with our vulnerable adults, because when I work with children who are, for instance, highly traumatized, the very nearness of another human being is even if there's not skin contact, evokes hormones, oxytocin in particular. And that is not what I find happens. And so that hormonal exchange is a piece of it. And there was research at the University of Washington that I have followed that indicates that the developing brain does not learn in the same way on screen as it does with the contact, the actual touch of another loving, trusted human being. The brain learns differently online than it does. And it's not that adults cannot learn, it's a different and less, for children, a less profound kind of learning. So the 3 things that I have found that I'm missing with the children with whom I work online is, 1, if I work with a really squirrely, screaming, raging kid and he cannot be in front of the camera for long enough for me to see what's going on and is running around the room, I miss how he opens a door or how he jumps up and down or pulls the dog's tail or what are these random movements around the room that I can't see because it's simply the camera's limited. The second thing I don't get is the comfortable eye contact that you would get in person. That's oxytocin, it evokes oxytocin, and we know that there are certain elements of being online that tip the brain more towards cortisol than oxytocin, and the brain learns best if it's oxytocin rich. The third thing that I'm missing is actual touch. And with children, whether I touch them or not is very dependent child to child, but often that's an important component of what I do. Because I work with the level of the brain virtually that's growing your toenails rather than the cortical brain that might extend out to be able to have an understanding of what's going on in the screen, I am deeply missing my connection to these children. And for many children, it's ironic, I've spent my life, 35 years of working with kids, trying to pull them away from screens and into body contact and awareness and connectedness. And it's the connectedness that is part of the healing of the children with whom I work. And so there are big pieces that are missing. And it occurs to me, I don't think I'm the only one who works with children. I know Martha does, but my sole practice almost, 5% of my practice are brain injured adults, but primarily with the children, the lessons that I learn may in fact apply to some of the adults who are feeling in a childlike place. And I just have one more thing to say. When I was thinking about working online and thinking about the times I've had the most profound learning, almost every single time it is because someone put their hand on me, on my shoulder, on my face, looked in my eyes. And those have been the most profound learning moments that have changed my life. So that's what I wanted to add.
Thanks. Thank you. Rochelle.
Hi, I kind of want to, because I'm here in Chicago, and I want to talk a little bit about privilege, because my online teaching experience has come into contact with basic assumptions about privilege that that I think we want to consider in terms of affordances and constraints. We're losing, let me just pull up my notes, we're losing, with the online work, we are losing the potential to offer a safe space for many of our students. In the world in which I teach, not every student has a safe space at home. They don't have physical space to extend their arms always. They don't, I have one student whose stepfather looks at her weird every time she moves in the house. Other students who are watching their siblings or their nieces. And so we've lost, by not providing a physical space in which to move, one constraint has to do with the privilege of the people whom we're teaching to actually have a space in which they can move. If they can't go outside, it might be too cold or too hot or too dangerous in many neighborhoods here. So the privilege of having space is really high on my mind. And who's in your space, right? Especially now during the COVID environment. Another concern of mine has to do with locomotion. So, we can, I think there's some, I'd love to hear what Martha has to say on this, but from what I know about developmental patterns, there's one thing to do a gesture and another to take it into a weight shift, into a change of support, into locomotion and space. And if we don't have the space in which to move, how can that sequence be completed. And our legacy of activating and motivating, and our legacy of spatial awareness. So part of what I've been doing in my online teaching is having people look away from the screen, step away from the camera, identify and move in response to the space that they're in, so that they step out, a little bit more in direct attention that includes the screen, but also what's beyond it, right? Or the placement of the screen in the room. We're also missing the co-regulation aspect that I think Betty was talking about and many other people have talked about, of everybody in the room embodying the same thing at the same time, or something from within a similar range at the same time. So if I've got students in a household where other things are going on, there's also this influence of the other people. Lastly, I want to talk about the privilege of access to devices and props. Many of our students are trying to do this on their phones, which is much too small of a screen. And so we're trying to identify what is the minimal kit that we need to send home with students for them, that we as a school need to provide to students. What size screen do they need to have? What type of online access? Any props or tactile objects like some of you were talking about, how do we shift and provide that? I think that's it. Those are just, I want us to think about privilege too, in who we're working with and what their environments are like. And I'll sign off over. Okay.
Thank you. No, that's really, really important. Helen.
Yes, I'm just wondering if it would be possible to identify a process by which we take turns speaking.
I'm certainly open to that. I was going to do some breakout rooms for smaller groups, but I'm also open to staying here. I don't have any other way. Tell me a little more about what.
Well, like for example, I raised my hand by the method that was described, that you go to participants and you come down. There, I just did it again, and I raised my hand. So I don't understand how you are asking who to speak when.
I was just, given a list, so I actually can't see the hands. So I'm sorry if you've been waiting a long time.
Oh, no, it's not a question of me waiting a long time. It's just wanting to be able to identify the process a bit more. But that's fine. That's fine.
I think Curtis has been helping looking at hands, and then he had put it in the chat, and I didn't see the chat because I'm learning also. Even though I'm very multi-focused, this is like bigger than me, what I'm used to. So, but did you want to share something?
No, that was what I wanted to share.
Okay. Thanks, Helen. All right. So let me ask this group if and I hear this. It seems like there are some big questions that are philosophical as well as embodiment questions, and then there are nuts and bolts, which is, I think, actually something concrete is a little easier. Since we have about 45 minutes more. And also, if anyone needs to get up and move, I'm standing, but I know I've been moving and stretching and hopefully not distracting anybody. But do take care of your body, because this is a big thing with doing for me, online classes. I ignore what I need, and that affects things. So how do people feel about, we could go to nuts and bolts as opposed to theory, and I've been taking lists of things, of issues, because there are many that have been raised that are incredibly important, including all the brain connectivities or lack thereof. Or should we do some breakout rooms where people can talk about what's coming up for them so far? So I'd like to just, I think you might have to unmute and just yell out. Otherwise, it'll take too long. Any thoughts about that? Any comments about what might be best?
Here. And
Pardon?
I have no idea, this is Jackie Hand, and you will have to guide me if you do go into breakout, because I have no idea how to do that.
That's okay. Other people take care of that.
Okay.
We have some leaders, and Curtis is going to put you all in rooms. So you don't have to do anything except watch your screen.
Thank you.
I would just say we probably need 15 minutes if we break out. This is a very loquacious group, yeah?
Yeah, that's what I think. Shall we do that?
I'm thinking if this is Rochelle, I wonder if we want to break out into our, based on our taxonomy, maybe body, effort, space, shape, and phrasing, or maybe, you know, so that we each come back with something that might be helpful, that each group is maybe discussing or focusing on something that we could come back and report to the others about.
Yes.
In terms of affordances and constraints.
Yeah, there was going to be a reporting, and I was going to have people mix because I thought that, I didn't know which topics would be useful.
Sarah?
Yeah.
If I could, that might be a little complex for right now. I've got the rooms already set up automatically into rooms. That might be something if we schedule ahead of time to organize.
Right. I think that would be great, because certainly future conversations can be focused around different topics, and that's really up to this group. So let's take 15 minutes in breakout rooms, and you can ask for specific things. You can talk about what's coming up for you. I think that would work. We have some pre-designed people who've offered to be focalizers. That is, they'll make sure everyone gets to speak. And I think in the breakout rooms, you just turn off your mics and see how that works. And then they'll report back. So Curtis, do your thing.
All right, here we go.
So if we could have the reports from the
we still missing
leaders,
some people.
that would be great. Just
Laura, I think we still miss some people. Maybe some
Okay,
group
we'll wait a little
don't realize that they have to push the leave room in order to come back. Probably.
Oh, hi, Penny. Didn't see Penny before. Hi.
Hi, Tara.
We still miss one or two groups, it seems.
But
Thank
the
you.
person who organize breakout rooms can ask people to back and to finish the breakout rooms session. But I don't know who did it.
Yeah, because sometimes they will be brought back automatically from the breakout room to the main room. Sometimes you have to push the button. And this is my first time that I realized I have to push the button, leave the room in order to come back.
Oh,
So that's
thank
probably
you.
the reason some people are missing. Yeah.
Right. Well,
You definitely have to push the
that's a
button
new
if it
feature.
hasn't ended yet.
Some people had to leave. That was the other thing.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right, because this is 2 hours, a long time. So maybe the focalizers from the breakout rooms could speak. Thank you for stretching. I've been doing that. Okay, Karen.
All right, so I had a great group. We talked about, we covered a range of things. One is that, in terms of bandwidth, the screen freezing, having more people on the screen is problematic. We need to have fewer. Some people said we use the room around us. We leave the screens, we go to the room. Somebody said they're happy to be around other people's artwork and to get out of the dance studio background. Some people are limited by the students are in the hallway space, and so they don't have width, and maybe even not height in some cases. We talked about the culture of the space that people are in, whether it's their family space, whether it's shared, whether it's their own space. What's the nature of the family, what's the nature of the surroundings and the people that they're with. One person said they haven't, taught online, and it's lonely to be on hiatus from being with people, in the room with people. Others said that the online class has been responsive. It has been very positive. People have been very happy to be in the online class because they wouldn't have access otherwise. there is a education and therapy kind of discussion concern. What happens when people are feeling the emotional part of what's going on, which is, of course, what Karen Studd started with in this question. And people talked about their experience of feeling the emotional piece anyway, and being aware of it. Those who are therapists may find that they do some kind of switching around with that. But most of the people, most everybody is saying that sometimes the one-to-one work is much clearer in the online environment than it was in the studio. Talked about building the nest for safety in order to begin to help people advance and learn and feel safe. And then the last point was talking about sequencing and phrasing, which is a future conversation that we feel like we need to have. How do you sequence and phrase in the online space? So that was our group. They're brilliant.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, a lot of, you touched on a whole range of things. Thank you. Leslie.
We did introductions. We talked about wanting to know more about what works and doesn't work online, and the difference between group and privates. I brought up, because I teach groups, you have to think about camera choreography, and then if you're sharing documents and things like that. Then we also talked about what's the level of the client, meaning what experience do they have somatically, movement-wise. That might determine your online experience. And then somebody brought up also that in making it more personable, naming the experience within the session to bring out more the emotion of the session. So that's as far as we got.
Did you say naming the experience?
Yes. You know, talking about your experience that you had during the session.
Right. Okay. All right. Angie, I don't know how to pronounce your name. Just a sec. Well, let's do Barbara and then we'll do the last person. Oh, there she is. Just a sec. All right, Barbara.
Okay. Yeah, we started with introductions and who we worked with and the way what we were doing online, and then basically kind of started with kind of topics that people would be interested in, maybe having smaller group kinds of studying, and that included neuroscience, body chemistry. Someone's already said individual group work, multicultural work, translation. How do we frame this shift into cyberspace in a constructive way? And how do we learn from others, organizations that are wrestling with this? How to learn quickly for everybody who has to sort of turn on a dime and suddenly be teaching in a different way. And also another topic was use of music and voice, so technology. But basically, yeah, the idea that maybe like different themes and topics that people can then opt into.
Right. Just a minute, I found the person. So it's Anizika. How do you pronounce your name? I'm so sorry. Someone help me.
Well, Tony took notes for our group.
It's Agnieszka, if you're talking about Agnieszka.
Yeah,
Agnieszka.
Yeah.
I can start, but Tony made the notes, so.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Tony.
Hello, Tony. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. Well, we discussed a lot about practical things, what is working, and we didn't have enough time to talk about what is not working. So I summarize what we discussed. We notice there are some parameters we need to be aware about when we teach the class online. So the first thing is about the embodiment experience of the participant. What's experience, how ready they are in order to get into the class. The second is size really matter. In general, the smaller size, like 3 or 4 very small groups, that apparently works better. for the students as well as for the instructors. They feel better connection. And also, of course, the teaching experience accounts, how experienced with the instructors, with the teaching, also online teaching, how experienced, how comfortable they feel to do that. And of course, the content, the type of the class. We talk about a very in-depth class or the supervision type of class. And also, people discuss a lot about the preparation is so important, or we call that preconditioning. So before we start the class, how technology is really well in place. And some people even they send some materials to the participant beforehand so that they get tuned with the class before they join the class. It seems that is so important. And even some, if you can have a very big screen, I think one of our members mentioned she has a huge screen, and that really can help for her to see everyone and to build connection with everyone. And we also talk about the duration of the sessions, not too long. I mean, if it's more than 3 hours, people maybe lose concentration. And also important to have the exertion and recuperation. We need to be very aware of these dualities, and so that we can have a self-care for ourselves. And so, as I said, that we talk a lot about how we can work things out, but we didn't have time to talk about what cannot be done. So it's just the start of the conversation of everything. Yeah.
Right.
That's it.
Thank you. Well, it's similar to, the material that I wrote up from, and that I sent you a while ago. I'm aware, yeah, is there someone else? I'm aware that it's 10:42 and everyone has ideas, and so I don't know that there's time for more information here. I was going to see if there was any more time for sort of nuts and bolts, something very concrete, but I think in this process of sharing what you talked about in small groups, people did speak about some very specific kinds of areas of attention that helps sessions, and that makes it harder. And the issues about the capacity for an embodied experience, particularly for groups, is a really huge topic about how that can happen and how people can have attention to their process and a responsiveness to their process. So in the time we have left, I don't know if anyone wants to share anything general, any general comments or something that you're feeling right now, or if people have suggestions about ways to proceed. In my thought, having a series of salons or gatherings, and maybe even smaller, because it's hard to even see everyone at once. I have to keep going from screen 1 to screen 2 to see everyone. Karen, I'll get you first. That's good. So just to see how to proceed, and I'm very happy to be a point person to follow this through. I don't need to be a leader. Karen, what were you going to say?
I just wanted to say something that I didn't include on the list, but that I said in the group, which is that I've been teaching on Zoom for a long time, and for various reasons, but mostly because I live in a remote area. But I wanted to say that Zoom was designed for collaborative work. It was designed to be a tool for meetings and not so much for presentations. They've added the presentation feature, but it was really designed originally to be a conversation. And I think that we need to think about our pedagogy in those terms. How does it change if I'm not the only expert in the room, but we have here, for example, 32 experts, right? And so it's a conversation, not me teaching. It changes our pedagogy.
Thank you.
I think that in future that have themes, whether it's breakout rooms or different meetings of different group online. I mean, I think there's a difference between group and private sessions. And then if people want to do more speciality, depending on their practice.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. Those are important topics. Yes, was that Ainsley? Oh, and people, put your hands up again because I can't look at two screens, and Curtis will help so that I see people. Okay, Natasha?
I would be interested in eventually having some kind of sharing with the CMA, broader CMA world and the non-CMA world that shows our particular expertise and our sensibility with respect to Laban and the Laban movement analysis system. I got tickles in my spine when Tony talked about exertion and recuperation. And I can imagine the framework that frames our work, although we have very diverse experiences and diverse opinions and diverse perspectives, we are a CMA community. And I would love to share what that framework, how that framework informs in a particular way, moving and dancing and teaching and healing online.
Great. I hope, would you write that sentence down too and tell it to me, because I'm writing code and I think I won't know what my code says. That would,
no problem. I'll email
it so beautifully. Thank you.
I'll email it to you.
Thank you, because it was just gorgeous. Yeah. Curtis, who's next? Do you know? I'm sorry.
No hands raised.
Pardon? Oh, I see a hand. I see Jennifer. Sorry.
Hey, I'm just bouncing off of Natasha. Maybe Natasha, you implied this in what you stated, but through what Natasha was talking about, maybe there could be a session where somebody demos a class for us using those principles.
Sounds great. Oh, thank you.
Tara?
Yeah. Oh, Tara Munji. Tara Munji? Oh, Tara.
Sorry. One thing that has come up quite a bit is the difference between having people who are already, air quotes, embodied, have experience with somatic practices versus newbies, if you will. And I think our approach, our pedagogy, there are different demands in those two different arenas. So that might also be two different trajectories for breakouts. How do you introduce material in this forum versus how do you, continue a rapport with people who have been working in your arena?
Thank you. Good. Anyone else? Any other ideas or any other main topics that you'd like to see? Yes, Jennifer, is that you again? No, just stretching.
I have a technical question.
Yes.
Sarah Jane. I just clicked save chat because I see there's a lot of interesting information that has been offered. Does anyone know how will that go onto my computer?
It does. It goes into a folder automatically called Zoom. So just search for a folder called Zoom.
Thank you.
But you have to save it. You have to save it. There's three little dots down at the bottom of the chat, and you have to save it. Yeah. Okay.
Next time, if I may, next time when we meet, let's periodically have an opportunity to move the 2 hours we're together. I'm pretty stiff.
I know, I'm sorry. I was hoping you would just. Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry.
No, it's not you.
I was moving myself.
I didn't want to leave the screen and move around.
Let's have Ted lead us in movement. That would be fun.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah.
I just stood up and moved around.
Well, that's okay. We can do it both ways, a little on your own and then everybody. And actually, I'm doing some of Susie Tutora's class, and we always share movement, and she also works with groups as an assignment. So you meet with people in between and you get to know them and you get to work, keep changing, and that really helps with group dynamics. But perhaps you can do right now your own, actually, I feel very teary. I'm so glad that there's so much interest, and we need to keep on. And I'm going to write just a couple of ideas, and that won't be definitive, but we'll start where we start, and different people can pick it up and go, I want to pick this up and do it. So I don't have to be, I'm like a helper, but I don't have to be the only person who says, oh, I want to do a salon about X. Please, if you have the idea, it's not hard to set it up. Please do it. And I'll continue as well, but perhaps we can just all breathe for a moment. And I'm just going to mirror a few people whom I see, because then I'll feel a little bit connected. And we have 2 screens of people. So I hope I'm not. So you have to like click screen 2, so you get to see some other people and you get to move with them as well. Oh.
The other screen.
Oh. And then we can just come back together. And I would just like to finish. We might stop a minute or 2 early, but if we could do a popcorn style about anything that you're experiencing now, or a question that's really burning for you, or something, so that you can, because we talked a little about completion, or the thing about, I think if I were to turn this off right now, I would not feel complete. I don't even know what I need. So I just like to offer a space if people want to say, I'm just grateful that everyone came and brought their curiosity and their expertise, because we have a lot of expertise here and a lot of unknowns, and we'll keep this going in some way that is not yet totally clear. Yeah, Karen.
I just want to share an idea that came to me when I was doing my community dance class a few weeks ago, which is that we did a virtual stroll. You remember the dance, the stroll, where 2 people danced down the middle? And this was the most successful thing I did in this entire experience, because everybody was laughing, everybody was getting into the same rhythm. So even though we can't see each other, we don't have actual eye contact, the fact that these pairs of people moved together and the rest of the group supported them was so much fun, and everybody just felt released and connected at the end. So I just want to offer that. It's not hard to come up with these things. You just got to be, look at your group, see what's going on, put on really good music. It helps.
Yeah. Thank you.
What do you do?
Yes, Hillary.
I am curious what Karen actually did, but like someone else I just heard. I also just wanted to say I feel grateful for all of the kind of genuine sharing of genuine curiosity and genuine not knowing. Like I feel supported by all of your not knowing.
So perhaps the stroll is something that only us older people know.
I wanted to know literally how you got 2 people in the middle of a bunch of other people when we're all in little boxes. That's what I wanted to know.
So I just called out 2 people's names. I had 12 people in this group, 2 people at a time. The other 10 would support them and, just give them an underlying beat or a movement that supported what they were doing. They matched each other. The music matters.
So this was in gallery view you did it?
That's how you did, okay.
Another option that we used in one group is that if everybody puts their hands to the edge of their frame where they see themselves, then we can feel like we're all holding hands in the circle. And that's lovely. We can make a whole circle of hands. And I was really anxious to join the group because I've been hanging out in my little neurodevelopmental world and haven't gotten back to my CMA community for a long time. So thanks for listening. We can all hold hands just for a minute here. Do you want to make a circle just for a minute? Go to the edge of your picture.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, now we're all holding hands. We can even sway it a little bit. Yeah, thank you.
Wow. Anyone else?
Thank you, Tara, for bringing this together and doing it.
Well, I'll put something out for the next thing and then we'll see where we go. But, oh, just love you all. I'm glad that we started something and we can continue. Who was speaking?
I was speaking. I just want to say thank you, Tora, to organize this one, and also thank you, many thanks to Kara to start this conversation, which is so important for our community. And there are still many things not answered, like what is working, what is not working. But as you all mentioned, that we just start off the conversation. And I hope that our conversation will continue in the future. Thank everyone. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Tara. Thank you.
Yes, and I would appreciate any feedback you want to give me, any suggestions, because I'll, over the next week, it'll take me, a week because I have some other things to do to continue. I also want to say, I meant to do this before, I've taken a lot of Martha Eddy's Body, Mind, Dancing, and she manages to form a community online, so that it's something that really can be done. So, and I know a lot of you are doing it, and we're all doing that. So
I wanted to say one more thing to Karen. I said it in the chat, and you talked about the pushback to the idea, and I apologize for putting you in that position so strongly. So because it's so important, but I just want to say it publicly because it was strong. So thank you for standing out in that position, and also sorry for pushing back quite so hard. Yeah. I know you from a long time. Yeah. Okay, thanks for letting me say that.
Yes, Donna.
Yeah, I would just like to say I'm really moved by Karen Bradley's comment about the origins of Zoom's intention. It just resonates a lot for me. It's really about the collective. It's about meeting. It's about coming together. And there's so many ways that we're feeling the way it keeps us apart somatically. But how is it collectively? What does that mean about pedagogy? And what does that mean about our future as human beings? I mean, there's something about all of this and what we're talking about right now about being in the unknown, being vulnerable together, and sharing that feels like is the real content right now of what life is about. And I'm just appreciating that that's happening. And I'm appreciating being back with all of you after all of these years and feeling that connection way back to Irmgard, that it's over time too. Yeah.
It actually also reminds me of the concept of the student collaborator, which is an old concept that Bartunieff was one of the student collaborators.
Oh my God, yes.
If we're going to go there, we could talk about John Dewey. He called it communities in the making. Every moment we're with any group, we're a community in the making.
Right, and there's impermanence with all of that. So there's this constant change, and we are in a world, this is very emotional, of such great chaos. In addition to impermanence, it feels like there's so much chaos. And I love that we are all in our own ways recreating each time we meet people to create a ground for growth out of chaos. So
I have a very practical concern. I think that there's range of people who have intuitive or intuitively comfortable with the technology. And for those of us who didn't grow up so much with it, I mean, most of us didn't grow up with it, but I think there are people here who are far more comfortable with it, and others who need some basic skills. And it would be wonderful to have a forum where we can all upgrade our just basic skills in using this technology and talking about the best forums. And Google Meets is an excellent forum, for instance, but I don't, there's so much I don't know. And I think there are people here who know more than I do. And I would love to be upgraded in my just technical knowledge in order to move forward.
Yes.
I want to say Google Meet sucks, but that's beside the point.
Okay.
I put something, Curtis and I know that. I put something in the chat that is an article that might give you some ideas. It's big think ideas. They're not, it's not technology based. It's ideas. So please grab that, and if you want to think about it, and we can talk about that another time too. But I want to say I'm available for Zoom tutorials if anybody wants that. I've been doing it for.
I'm very comfortable with them.
Yeah.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you save the chat, where do you find the folder that it's saved in?
Wonder too.
It's called Zoom. The folder is called Zoom.
Oh.
How do you save
do a
it?
search for in your folders for Zoom, you'll find it.
If you
and the
use
date
Mac,
will
it's in
be
Finder.
on the fold. The name of the folder is the date.
Will it be on my desktop?
No. It'll be in your folder, your tree of folders.
It's called Finder.
Okay.
Finder.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right, people, it's 11.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.
Big love.
Bye. Thank you so much. I'll be writing soon. Yes, the hands. Ta-da. Yes, yes, yes.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thank
Thank
you.
you. Good to see everyone.
Yes, very nice to see you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. 32 thank yous.